Hey, how's everybody doing? We are live here on YouTube and LinkedIn, and I'm excited to welcome Isaac Parks. Isaac, how are you, buddy?
Hey Scott, how's it going?
Good to see you. You
Yeah,
working out of the sauna there today?
the WeWork phone booths that double as saunas.
Yeah.
They do have good
Throw,
ventilation, though.
throw a
We'll
little
say
steam on a rock and you're good to go.
that. Yeah.
Cool.
Um,
Well, thanks for taking time. We had lots of, we did a news roundup last week, I'm sure you saw, where we celebrated you guys raising your 6 million raise. Congratulations. We were excited to be a small part of that.
we did it. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, and I got a million questions from other founders, and I thought, hey, I'll just shoot Isaac a note, see if he'll hop on a stream, and let's ask those questions and get it straight from the horse's mouth, as it were.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, I definitely wanted to get into the founding history and that kind of thing, kind of briefly. But before we do, let's kind of jump right in. So you guys had done kind of a pre-seed round. I can't remember how much, but that was about 8, 9 months ago. Is that right?
Yeah, it was just over a year before this round.
A year
Yeah.
ago. Yeah. Okay. Yep. And roughly how much was that?
Yeah, that was a 1.8 pre-seed round. 1.8.
1.8. Okay. Yeah. Cool. And then, so then walk us through, kind of the process you guys went through as you worked on this. I guess you would call this a seed round. Are you guys calling it a seed or?
Yeah, we had some advice given to us that we should call it a seed round just because our last one was a pre-seed. And but yeah, it worked out great. It was a $6 million round. It came together pretty quickly. It turned into a competitive process right from the get-go, and so that was very fortuitous. We had that sort of privilege and luxury of being kind of right in this mid-cycle of healthcare and AI, and so we count ourselves lucky for how well it went.
Cool. So you guys, I was on the, I could kind of see the process a little bit. So you guys did a really good job of kind of, you had some targets that you did a lot of research. So this is what I tell a lot of founders is, Crunchbase is your friend, and they have a paid version. It's like $50 a month, totally worth it, where you can kind of say who's done seed rounds recently in health tech and AI, right? I don't know if you guys did that specific search, but it's really good to kind of like have a list of companies and filter by your round you're looking for, also a size. So you guys were looking for, I guess a $6 million seed. You don't want to like find people that do $2 to $4 million seeds because that's another criteria that you can kind of chop off. And I remember you guys had like a really tight list of kind of like almost an ICP, but a idea, venture profile, IVP, we'll call it.
Yep.
And yeah, and you guys did a really good job of outreaching to this. Did you guys just kind of cold intro into them, or did you use your
No,
networking skills?
no. So we used our pre-seed investor network. We also used just our friends venture network, and and just general research. And what we did was we pulled together that hunt list of around 150 to 200 firms that we knew would potentially be interested. We made sure to do conflict checks on all of their portfolio or their portcos. Just you can only do so much, right? But we did as much as we could with what was publicly available to make sure that we weren't like pitching somebody that we knew was going to be a competitor or going to have a competitor portco. Then what we did was after doing all the sort of basic demographic information, like who's the primary partner that would care about what we're working on. And so we would do some background information on the partners that, what their investments were, what their theses were, whether they were the healthcare partner or the AI partner or things like that. We tried to figure out whether they would write lead checks and how much they would lead. And then once we had those target partners set, we distributed that list to all of our network. And then we said, hey, folks, we're about to go out to this raise. Can you give us sort of your strength of connection to anyone at those firms? Right. So we had a bunch of our existing investor partners do their sort of comb network. We did all the work to collate that information. And then what we did was we came up with sort of the priority list of who we wanted to hit first. We did all this prep work. I think it was August. It was like right before, like the month before we actually went out to go raise. So that the day that we said we're going to kick it on, we were able to send out and coordinate with everybody. Hey, here's this tranche of 50. We're going to go after this first week. We're going to try and set up 20 to 30 meetings. And please give us all the warm intros for those conversations. One of the really helpful tips was making sure that we got the highest degree of relationship intro to that particular partner that we wanted But then we would also sometimes back channel in a second or third person to maybe another partner or maybe another person who knew that person as well. Because the more that person or that partner got hit with an introduction, the more we were like, okay, there's probably going to be something there for them to react to.
Yeah. Yeah, this is let me recap this because this is really smart. So you did a bunch of research, came up with a candidate. So top of the funnel was candidate folks that were in your category, your check size, and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Then you look for conflicts, which is smart because you don't want to waste someone's time by not doing that. And it makes you look kind of more amateurish if you kind of realize you don't realize there's a competitor there. Then you actually then went into the individual partner you wanted to target because you could kind of tell. And what I've done to figure that out is look at the press releases of who they've invested in. So let's say they've done 5 tech and 5 healthcare companies. Always the person that's quoted is usually the one that led the deal and is on the board. So that's kind of how you figure that out, right? And then you figured out who would write a lead check. How was that through social engineering? Like, how did you find that? Or Crunchbase will say lead in there, but it's a little sketchier.
Sort of. We actually perplexity'd it. So we just perplexity'd said, hey, how much is the lead round check size for each of these individuals? And it would give us the sources. And it would pull from random articles that said, hey, this was a press release that this person led this round for this much.
Okay.
It was fantastic. It wasn't like 100% accurate, but it was close enough that we could make safe assumptions that these were people that we wanted to reach out to.
Yeah. And then, okay, so we used Crunchbase at the top. Conflict was manual, I imagine, just kind of manual. You guys know who your potential competitors are, so that was easy.
Yep.
And then partner was from PR. Maybe you even asked the Perplexity. And then strength of connections. Did you guys do something complicated where you downloaded everyone's LinkedIn and triangulated, or just asked?
No, we just asked for qualitative. Yeah. So, and each investor that we had on our cap table was already primed. Like, they do this a lot, right? So they're already primed with who they know at which location. And then the other like sort of pro tip with them was not just, hey, here's our list who has that strength of connection, but please add anybody else that you know. And, we had different like, tongue in cheek, like just a friend, right? Great friend, best friend, right? And sort of trying to gauge to what degree, they'll take any meeting I throw at them, that kind of a level of intimacy. That's what we're looking for.
Yeah, that's what's hard about LinkedIn. You'll see someone's connected, and I'm connected to people I haven't talked to since 2017.
Yeah,
I'm not gonna be able to. I'll give it a shot, but I would call that like warm/cool kind of intro, like not even warm. Yeah. And the other thing you guys did was by sequencing this. August is a slow time, right? But everyone comes back in September.
Yep.
The other thing, by sequencing it all in lockstep, you made sure the process ran in lockstep. So I've seen some folks, they'll kind of like they'll do the work for 5 investors and then they'll put them in motion, and then another 5 and another 5. And the problem there is they don't line up at the end, where what you're trying to do is create a, basically an auction, like a competitive process.
Yeah. You want to get, and then that's where also some of the art comes in, right? Where we had, I think the goal was to try and get 15 to 20 first conversations within the first week, and we wanted to send. So we assumed a 50% attrition rate, and so we sent out for warm referrals, and we were very strict with our investors, saying, hey, we only want this number of introductions, and we were very specific: fire this off, fire this off, fire this off on day one. And then as we sort of got that rolled up and we went through the first week, we started realizing, okay, well. We want to be ready, right, to tee up the next 50, right, assuming that things go well and people start the process. And so if we got really early interest in that first week, we had to do the work to try and not necessarily like intentionally slow it down, right, but just not respond as quickly.
Gotcha. Yeah. Cool. So you kind of manage the process, and then to the extent you're comfortable sharing and don't use names, did you end up with some competitive things going on that kind of helped you? A lot of times founders get obsessed with valuation. I kind of think of it as more like you want a little bit of that, but you don't want to go too far because you don't want to get too far over your ski tips, right?
Exactly.
Meaning you get this valuation you can't go into. So I imagine you did it more for it's more for kind of like thinking about fit, right? Like are these the folks? It's a lot like getting married in a way. You're gonna be with all these investors that we get in this early stage, and even middle stage. You're gonna be with 5 to 10 years. So you're gonna spend a lot of time with these people. So
and especially this round, right, being one of the rounds where we would bring on a board member for it, right? We wanted to make sure that partner was a good relational fit for us, right? Not just a strategic one as well. But to your point earlier, it did turn into a competitive process, and so we were again very fortunate and had that privilege of being able to take advantage of that.
Yeah. Cool. So you kind of probably start with like a large set that are in play, and then some drop off from valuation and stuff, and you end up with like two or three. That's kind of a good set of a panel that you can kind of pick from, and you know, and at that point, I would go like have a meal with them and spend a fair amount of quality time, talk strategy, like what do you think our strategy should be, and kind of make sure they're kind of aligning where they could say. We think, if they said something weird like, we think you should be a consumer company and you have no
Yeah.
plans for that, you can be like, that's kind of disqualifying in a way. Yeah.
Right, totally. Yeah, that was actually one thing that I was a little caught off guard by with, which and that shouldn't have been, but how much in-person time was going to be valuable as a part of the selection process, not just on our side, but also on their side, right? Sort of making sure that it was like some going on location, meeting them in place, like the IC in place in the same room. That was good due diligence time for both sides, and so that was something that I shouldn't have been surprised by, but I was.
Yeah. Back in my Challenger days, I did, it was way more common because we didn't have so much Zooming, but I was
Right.
at I had it down to three people and I went to have dinner with this guy and he just like totally ripped the waitress over some minor thing. And I was like,
Oh,
that's going to be me in 2 years. Like I'm going to miss some number or something by like,
yeah,
3 decimal points. And it's going to be
yeah,
like,
totally.
the other side of it. Yeah.
Yeah, and in the last round, we was just coming off of COVID, so we kind of had that like, we were still sort of riding on that like nobody really wants to see each other anyway, kind of a
Yeah.
movement. So
Yeah.
yeah,
So you got the pre-seed done without a lot of in person, and the seed took a fair more of going out and visiting.
yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
Yeah. Cool. Tell us. So you ended up choosing Freestock Capital. So that's a great brand. Congrats on that.
Thank you.
What were some of the, so I think they're like 150 in their latest fund, but I think they have a lot more assets under management. What were some of the things that were attractive to you? That led you to choose them?
Yeah, so Jenny Lefcourt led our round, and she was the partner who got that first introduction for us. And her reputation precedes her in terms of her founder friendliness, her smarts, her experience, and just the way that she, even from in the first 5 minutes, of our first conversation, I was like, oh man, she knows what she's talking about. She does it in a forward and honest way, without being incredibly judgmental or abrasive. And those were all qualities that, like from a relational standpoint, all of a sudden it put me in a frame of mind where it's like, oh, this is somebody who I could learn from, right? Who can coach, right? But isn't going to do it in a way that is going to take away or shortcut or under like kneecap our own sort of like entrepreneurial intuition, for lack of a better word. I mean, she consistently reminds us again and again that we're the operators, right? We're the ones that can really make the appropriate decisions. She was not ego-driven in any way, shape, or form. She was truly focused on what was best for the company, and that just came out over and over and over again.
Nice. Good. Cool. And then, so I was kind of reading, we have a set of companies that we've invested in the Tweener Fund, and they aspirationally want to be this seed strapping. And I kind of put that onto you guys. I didn't have a chance to talk to you about it, but just kind of knowing you, I felt like I was kind of in the right strike zone. Do you think this could be the last, there's no commitment that it is, but
right.
You guys are so wildly efficient. I just don't see, that you're gonna need much more capital after this. Or maybe you tap into some new vein, like never say never, but like give me some thinking on like your mindset around that efficiency and that whole thing.
Yeah, super great question. I think Andrew likes to say this a lot. The name of the game for us is not necessarily one exact capital path or not, right? For us, the name of the game is optionality, right? The minute you start restricting your optionality, you put yourself in a position where you have no ability to be flexible in the way that you approach a particular like change in the market or change in the product strategy or whatever, right? If you limit your capital path, right, to any way, shape, or form, in some degrees it places greater constraint on what you can do as a business, right? And so for us, we're not in it to raise multiple rounds. If that happens on our way to pushing preventive care through value-based care, like in healthcare, great, right? Fantastic. If it happens through some other alternative form of experiment or something, also great. We just don't know yet, right? And it would be, I would say, arrogant of us to make that decision without being thoughtful for what it means for driving towards our mission.
I got it. So I'm not trying to pin you in on optionality, but like, um, as an outside observer, you guys are wildly efficient for what you've built so far. Like, how is that? Like, just because you're it's just baked in your DNA because you're AI native, or you guys have like built enough stuff that you just are by nature efficient? Like, how where does that come from?
Yeah, I would say honestly, it comes from the team. Like
And I could be wrong. You could say I don't feel like we're wildly efficient.
uh, I,
Yeah,
I mean, I always say we're not wildly efficient enough, right?
that's
Um,
part of being wildly efficient. Yeah.
right, but I would argue that not argue, but we did observe like during our last raise that we were called capital efficient. And if I just had to like do this and just name what it is, I think by DNA we are we are always going to be capital efficient. It's just how we think,
Mhm.
right? Be thoughtful about the choices that we make, right? Again, that sort of concept of optionality doesn't it's not even just for capital path, it's also for the way that we run our business, right? Do we want to take on like a prime expense that's going to last, that's going to be just a permanent one forever, or a fixed expense forever? Or do we want to address it in a way, or can we address this problem or solve this problem in a way that we can walk back from if we have to, right? So how do you de-risk it every single step? And I think that actually plays out symptomatically as being capital efficient.
Got it. Cool. And then to the extent you're comfortable framing this, what do you think to get this kind of a round done these days? So,
Yeah.
so a little bit later stage, like M&A right now, it's interesting as I've talked to a lot of the founders that have sold their companies or done some of these later like PE or strategics. Everyone's really focused in on used to be just kind of basic SaaS metrics, and
Right.
then it was um, NRR, and now it's GRR, so gross revenue recognition. Your earlier stage says you're so young, you probably couldn't even calculate those things yet. But what
Right.
is that seed investor looking for? Is it efficiency? Is it the size of your pipeline, the size of your revenue, or was it the solution you've built, or TAM, or like what do you think based on the questions you got? Were kind of like the factors.
Yeah, great question. I was talking to Jenny about this actually, just as a retrospective.
Why'd you
Yeah,
invest in this? Yeah, that's my second
yeah.
question.
Why did you trust her? Uh, yeah, she actually shared something really interesting. She said that at least at our stage, right? It's more art than science, right? And for her, it was more just trying to get this conviction around um, can uh, can or how or what is their narrative arc looking like, right? Is it their growth trajectory, or is it the like they're going to be like this but there's some other like compliance event or regulatory event that's going to happen later that'll make it go like this, right? Whatever that metric might be, whether it's revenue or growth, like customers on board or whatnot. Like it's really about what is that compelling story that can activate an investor or somebody to say, oh yeah, this is going to turn into something amazingly huge or big, either right now or later, and this is the bet that I need to take on that people. And so it's as hard as I tried to get her to pin her down, I'm like, what was it? Right? All I could get was this sort of implicit artistic. And so it could be any number of those things, I think, and it could
Mhm.
be and any number of those things in combination could be the appropriate metric for whatever that business is and whatever story they're trying to tell. It just happens to be unique to whatever that story is.
Yeah, well, I've also talked to investors that have led rounds like this recently, and a lot of them will have a theme, and then suddenly the company just kind of like almost like lays into the theme. So you can imagine in this health space world, health tech space, they have to have some thematic stuff because it's such a big space that I imagine there may have been an element of that where they were kind of thinking around how could you use AI for some of these inefficiencies, and you guys have just kind of like nailed that thematic area.
Yeah, there was
Yeah.
certainly a thesis around what AI is going to do for the future of work in general,
Yeah.
right? Particularly in healthcare is where we found that particular opportunity gap.
Yeah, so we're kind of telling the story backwards, but now that we've kind of talked about the fundraise, and give us the quick, how you guys founded the company, what Keebler does, and kind of any other, you've had some amazing, again from the outside. In that 1 year, you guys built the product and signed up a ton of customers, and it's just like had a ton of progress. You just like you skipped the whole product market fit thing, and I find that and now you probably didn't feel like it inside, but
Yeah, it
whatever
is.
you went through it very quickly. You didn't skip it. You went through it extremely fast. Like
Right.
give folks a little flavor of all that.
Yeah, I'll start with what are sort of actually I'll start with the origin story. So both Andrew, one of my co-founders, and I had we had met in a previous career or previous industry, and we had just remained friends just generally. And both of us had encountered healthcare issues independently, both related to the revenue cycle management world of healthcare, which is a shortcut for anything that's related to billing and claims and things like that.
Getting insurance claims taken
Yeah,
care of. Yeah,
yeah. I
gotcha.
had a personal one. He had like a business related one, and we both ran into the issue. And we formulated this thesis that a lot of the issue or problems that resulted in revenue cycle management were downstream problems, actually, and just in like systemic industry band-aids for an upstream problem around this inability to take an unstructured like encounter note or progress note that a doctor might write and pull out the actual structured information, like what happened, like what literally actually happened in that particular note. And this was right around the time when large language models were coming out, and we were like, oh, this is like a perfect use case. Like, how do you take unstructured information and pull out structured data at scale? So we said, let's try it. Andrew called up one of his old colleagues, who became our third co-founder, Kevin. And so initially we were like, hey, Kevin, do you know anybody who could be able to help us with this? And he said, oh, I'll do it. And so it just turned out, it worked out great. And what we initially did was we built for that particular problem, that revenue cycle management problem, in what is known as the fee-for-service world. Is generally the realm of healthcare that most of us, the majority of the general population, has probably experienced at some point. What we learned later was that we had unknowingly solved a bigger problem in healthcare around identifying not just what is happening in a particular person's medical record, but why it's happening. Like, what are the actual chronic conditions that are attached to that particular patient? And at scale, we started realizing, oh, wait a minute, we can take an entire person's medical history and really pull out any kind of insight related even to the artistic clinical nature of like, yeah, is this patient going to develop this particular chronic disease in 3, 6, 9 months? It had wild applications for this segment of healthcare industry that's growing rapidly, value-based care. So that's what we did. Is we built that product, and we had some friends that were like, "Oh, wait a minute! If you did it this way, I'll pay you right now." And it turned into that. We went to market at the top of 2024 with that first sort of proof of concept, and we were literally selling before we built anything. We just kept going and going and going, and we expected a degree of attrition at each stage, going from demo to pilot to commercial agreement, and surprisingly, nothing really fell off. Nothing really turned in that pipeline. So we had this moment in August, September when everything flipped to commercial agreements all at once. And that's when we took advantage and said, okay, let's go raise at the same time to link the two stories together.
Yeah, very cool. Awesome. And do you think that's because you just got your third founder you added, you guys didn't have subject matter expert other than being on the receiving end of the pain as patients. So someone would say these guys didn't really know the system yet they were successful. That's crazy. But sometimes being naive about a system enables you to solve a problem because people in the system don't think it can ever be solved. I've had that problem, that situation many times.
Yeah, that's definitely true. Somebody told us it was a holy grail problem, and we were like, "Oh, okay, let's see if we can solve that holy grail problem." And I temper that a little bit because all three of us did have healthcare experience, just not this kind of healthcare experience to this depth. So we knew enough to be dangerous and know where to look, which I think led to some of that capital efficiency. But to your point, we didn't know so much that it felt like an impossible task. Which outside looking in, I was like, "Oh yeah, that was kind of impossible."
But you've never built like a $10 million health tech company, right?
Nope, definitely not.
All right. Not that I'm aware of. Okay. Yeah, I didn't think you had. Yeah. Cool. Anything else you would tell founders that are out there on the money trail?
Oh man, just keep at it. Yeah, just keep at it. Recognizing that timing is everything, but timing changes, right? So no matter where you are in your progress or in your process, right, timing can change, sometimes to your favor.
Yeah, and you guys kind of kicked this off kind of heading into the election, which is kind of a choppy time, right?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, there was some nervousness around what that might mean, but we ended up being able to finish and close the whole round out before any of that uncertainty started weighing on our actual decision making.
Yeah, and then what was the rationale for keeping it under wraps for kind of a while?
Yeah, so for us, a lot of the value-based care world operates in different sales cycles that are really compacted within the year. And so one of the selling seasons is kind of that Q3, Q4, and one of them is in Q2. right? And so by the time we had really wrapped and closed the round, it was too late for us to take advantage of that announcement. And so we said, okay, strategically, let's hold on this, let's pause on it, and then let's release it just as we start to get into that sort of Q2 selling season. So that's why we released the announcement very recently.
Yeah, this is also a good. I see a lot of founders get wrapped up in, well, I could get in TechCrunch if I do X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
Well, your ICP isn't on TechCrunch, right?
Right.
Most likely. Maybe there's someone in a hospital system that glances over it or something. But you guys are really good about understanding the whole point of this is to drive sales. So you're coin operated, and I say that in a very positive way, where you're thinking about how do I use this news to get in front of my ICP.
Right.
And then even your PR strategy, you gave an exclusive to, I forget the name of the
Yeah. Mobile Health News. Yep.
yeah, so like an industry rag, and again I say that in a positive way. An
Yeah.
industry focused B2B outlet, you gave them an exclusive on the news because you knew that I infer that that's something a lot of your ICR your ICP reads, and
Exactly.
kind of like if you were gonna you know and this is another thing I always tell founders is get to know your customers so well you like know what sites they read and where they get their news,
Yeah.
and that's the key to this like super targeted marketing in today's B2B world is you got to like really understand where they're hanging out and what they're doing.
Yeah.
So,
Get
so
them
you
on your
guys
speed dial.
did a
That's what I
great
say.
job on that.
Yeah.
Say
Thank
again?
you. I said get them on your speed dial is what I always say.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. Cool. Well, thanks. I promised we'd keep this under 30 minutes. I think we'll get there right here. And really appreciate you taking time to share your founder journey with folks, and how you got this done. And congrats again.
Awesome. Thanks, Scott. Appreciate it.
All
Thanks
right.
for joining us on the journey.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. Bye,
Bye,
guys.
everybody.